Eventually, I just got to the point where I was like, I think being obese is going to be much worse on my health than, any kind of like perceived risk from this. Like it's worth a shot. And that kind of is the thing that helped me to just get over it. Like, which is worse, like some sort of perceived thing or the actual reality that I am obese.
Welcome to the Calorie Conundrum Podcast with Coach Strick. Join us as we expand the weight loss conversation to beyond just calories and dare to ask the question, why does eating less and exercising more sometimes not produce the desired results? Here's Coach Strick to discuss this Calorie Conundrum.
Hello and welcome to the Calorie Conundrum Podcast. This is Coach Strick, and on today's episode we have Kayla Cox. Kayla was an obese mom of three when in 2014 she was tagged in a photograph on Facebook and could barely recognize herself. Tired of riding the weight loss roller coaster, she decided to figure out once and for all how to lose weight and keep it off, eating whatever foods she wanted. She eventually found success with intermittent fasting, and after maintaining her initial weight loss for about a year, she started her own YouTube channel, 6 Miles to Supper, which has since grown to over 49,000 subscribers. She wrote a book detailing her relaxed, sustainable approach to weight loss called The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting, How I Lost Over 80 Pounds and Kept It Off Eating Whatever I Wanted. Let's hear how 6 Miles to Supper has led to significant and sustainable weight loss.
Kayla, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Well, just like most, guests that have come on our show have had an experience with weight loss and their health struggles and health crisis and things like this. Can you tell us, what was the moment or when was it that you decided that you wanted to do something with your health and your weight?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've always had a problem with my weight, going back from the time I was a kid, but specifically it was back in 2014. I got tagged in some Facebook photos and, I thought I was going to see pictures of my kids and I was excited about it, but because I always dodge the camera. And, but when I saw the pictures, there were lots of pictures of me and like full body, and I didn't recognize myself. And it was just this moment of, I felt humiliated. I kind of had this, I had no idea I had really let it get that far. And I was embarrassed. It was a really low point. And I even had some thoughts of like my family would be better off without me. I mean, it was just a really low point, and I was crying and I just prayed, help me. And in that moment I was like, I just had this, I've had enough. This has got to change, and it's got to be permanent. I can't continue this constant, lose some weight, then regain it plus some, and then, just constantly struggling. And so at that point, all I knew I wanted to do, I was like, I don't want to go on another diet. I've got to get this under control. And so for the first year though, I was taking progress photos. That was all I did. I was every week, I was I'm never going to feel like I don't know what my body looks like anymore. I'm just going to at least take these photos, to keep myself accountable. And so I did that. And I was just sort of trying to figure out what's the secret? People around me are at a normal weight and I'm not. So what is different about me? And, I had been on every diet. And so, I didn't want to just be on a diet because I knew my pattern was I'll be on a diet, I'll be good on the diet, I'll lose weight, but then I always go back to eating the foods I love. And then what happens is I regain the weight. So eventually I found intermittent fasting, and that was really where I started to have actual success with weight loss.
Okay, so you brought up a lot of different fun topics to go into.
Sure.
But you hit on it a little bit, but you found yourself in this place where you didn't like how you look. You saw your pictures, you didn't recognize yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were doing that led to that, you being overweight like that, and what were you doing previous to that led to this happening?
Sure. Yeah. So I think that there were a lot of things, and it was interesting because intermittent fasting helped me to get some clarity with all this. There were a lot of things I was doing that I didn't even realize I was doing. Like in my mind, if you had asked me, like, do you like emotionally eat? I would be like, I mean, maybe sometimes, like, doesn't everybody like feel stressed out sometimes and they like eat a cookie or something? And so there was definitely aspects of that I was doing. And just, overeating a lot, like distracted eating. I was doing a lot of that. I didn't realize it at the time. Again, it was like, those are things that I realized once I started doing intermittent fasting. But, like I wasn't what I would call like a binge eater, like as far as like, I know some people take that to extremes, and I guess there's like a whole spectrum, but like I was just uncomfortably full, like overly full. Like I'm just overdoing it, like at every meal probably, or a lot of my meals. But I didn't really recognize that, like, oh, there's this connection there, like that I really am doing this more often than I think. So I'm eating more than I'm thinking. And that's what's leading to the weight gain. Plus, like I felt like I was a really active person. At that time, I had 3 kids and they were young. They were like really young. So I'm thinking, I'm chasing these kids around. So obviously I'm active, but I got a Fitbit in December 2014, and I, put it on. And that day I thought, man, I'm easily going to say 10,000 by the end of the day. And it only had like a couple of thousand. I was like, oh, like maybe I'm also sedentary, and that's part of the issue. And I think so. I think it was those 2 factors combined, really, just overeating plus not being as active as I thought I was being.
Yeah. So I think this is like what most people, or a lot of people, have similar circumstance in that they're stressed, they feel busy, but they're really not being that active physically.
Right.
And then they're distracted because they're stressed out and all this other thing. And so they end up eating more than they realize. And they find themselves in a place like you found yourself in.
Yeah.
And so you said you found your answer with intermittent fasting. And so I've been studying this stuff for a while as far as health and weight loss and all this stuff goes. But still today, it blows my mind that when you say fasting or intermittent fasting, people still have this like fear or this wall to this idea of not eating. So could you tell us a little bit about intermittent fasting and how you use that to lose some weight?
Yeah. So that was funny that you talked about fear, because that was like my big thing was I would panic whenever I felt hungry. Was like, oh no, that means my body's about to go into starvation mode, which means I'm never going to be able to lose weight. Like it's going to get harder and harder and harder. And to like untrain myself to just be like, it's okay to feel hungry. Because I mean, first of all, like if you're always eating to the point of fullness, like you're going to either maintain your weight or gain weight. Like the idea that you should fear like hunger is just, I mean, it's just wrong. I mean, you have to be a little bit hungry almost for your body to, you need to be in some sort of like deficit or something to get your body, to the point where it can lose weight. So just getting rid of that fear. At the time, there's probably a lot more better information now, but at that time, there were lots of articles saying, oh, but if you're a woman, you have to be really careful about fasting and never fast for longer than like 14 hours. So, I was being like overly cautious because I was so afraid it was going to like mess up my hormones. But eventually I just got to the point where I was like, I think being obese is going to be much worse on my health than any kind of like perceived risk from this. Like it's worth a shot. And that kind of is the thing that helped me to just get over it. Like, which is worse, like some sort of perceived thing or the actual reality that I am obese. So.
Yeah, that's a smart move on your part, just to kind of say, well, let's look at the situation we got going here. Right. It's like, I'm already obese. Like, all right, so what's the worst that could happen? Right. That's kind of the deal you were going for. So I listened to your story, on your YouTube channel. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on the show, because your story is so much similar to so many people out there. But you just kind of took a different path when it comes to what you decided to do to lose weight. And part of your story you described as you started after about a year of getting into this, you got into like CrossFit. and then you got into powerlifting.
Yeah.
And can you tell us what happened when you got into those two things?
Yeah. So at that time, I had heard of intermittent fasting. It was a whole process. I was like trying to figure out what's going to work. And I got into this like idea of like, I just need to burn more calories. Like it's got to be really hard. Like I was starting out with CrossFit, eventually realized like I love powerlifting, and I was lifting heavier and heavier and heavier. And I was loving it. But at the same time, like I was not losing weight quickly. And I was like, what is the deal? Like, why am I not losing weight quicker? So I was really rushing myself. Like, I've got to lift heavier, and I've got to and I started to count calories, and I started to be really like crazy with like weighing and measuring my food. And I injured my back doing a deadlift. And at that point, that was devastating to me, because I was like, oh no, like I'm definitely going to gain weight now, because now I can't lift heavy, and I can't do this hard exercise, which was barely moving the needle anyway, is what it felt like. So I just felt really lost at that point. So it was just a really frustrating moment once I got to that point where I'm injured, and eventually I started just walking, just like having a step goal every day. And then I incorporated intermittent fasting. Because at the end of that year, I was ready to give up, because I had like plateaued with my weight loss, and it actually started to tick back up because I wasn't doing the same, workouts and stuff. So I wasn't burning as much, obviously. Plus I just had this bad mindset of like, it's inevitable. Like I'm going to gain weight. And, it's kind of like your mindset. You pretty much do what you believe is going to happen. Your actions line up with your beliefs. So I got really clear in January 2016. I said, okay, I'm going to do intermittent fasting 6 days a week, and I'm going to walk 6 miles a day. And that's really what I honed in on. And then the weight loss really started to happen for me.
Yeah. So we'll get into your secret recipe here, but I just want to, hit on the point that you made with this, what happened to you. And so many people have it in their mind that they just have to eat less and they have to exercise more. Mm-hmm. And the harder they exercise and the less they eat, the faster they're going to get the results, and the better they're going to be in the long run. And it never works that way.
Right. Yeah.
It always, usually something happens. Usually it's, an injury if they're working out hard. Mm-hmm. If they're bringing their calories really low, it's something to do with fatigue or some kind of mysterious chronic issue that pops up. But it almost never works. And so I just wanted to point that out to people that you found yourself in 2015, even though you love that type of exercise, it ended up getting you hurt. Right. And I'm not like totally bagging on exercise, but I've been a personal trainer for a really long time. And for the last year, I haven't been since the first year. And looking back, it's just hindsight's 2020, I guess. And I just see so many people wasting their time, energy, and risking, all these injuries because they think if they just go harder and burn some more calories, then that's going to get the results that they want. And it almost never works that way.
Right. You can't outrun your fork. Like that was something I really learned. Like the thing that I found with like really hard exercise like that is it increases your appetite, and that increase in the appetite, it's so subtle, like counting calories and everything. It's like, a little bit more peanut butter and a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. It can really increase the amount you're eating without you feeling like I'm eating more. Like it's such a really difficult thing. And I hate counting calories. Like I swore it off. I was like, I'm never doing this again. Cause it's like, it is a really, for me, and I guess some people feel differently about it, but for me, it just gets like an obsession, really unhealthy, like almost off the bat. It's like, I get in a really unhealthy place when I do that. So
no, there's a lot of people like that. I interviewed someone a couple weeks ago that had a similar issue. She said that her issue was, she was specifically talking about weighing herself. And she said, if I weigh myself, I know by the afternoon, I'm going to be counting my calories and restricting everything. And she's just going to lose her mind just by the number on the scale. And some people, I mean, there's a spectrum of how people react to these type of things, but there's a lot of people like you that, whether it's the scale or it's counting calories, they get locked into this mindset. And then it's really hard to get out of it or see outside of that box. And then
Right.
that's when you run into trouble when you, when
Right.
you start being that, way.
Right.
So, so the secret sauce was intermittent fasting and walking. So
Mm-hmm.
can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly you were doing? I mean, it's simple, but.
Yeah, sure. So probably by that time, I was probably at about a probably about a 16-8. So that means 16 hours of fasting and an 8-hour eating window. And so over the course of time, I was doing that. I was being very consistent. Like I said, I did it 6 days a week. I took Sundays completely off from intermittent fasting. So that was just like a day where I just ate like normal. And then over the course of that year, I pushed my window out a little bit further. I thought it would probably help me lose weight faster, but it didn't. Like, it was about a pound a week that entire time. So like, when I was at a 16-8, I went down to like an 18-6. I eventually got to like a 24. I really liked intermittent fasting because it helped my day to be so productive. Like, I have 3 kids, so if I want to have time for myself, you got to carve that time out somehow. So I loved that. It was like, wow, I don't even have to think about food until, later in the afternoon. So I could get so much more done. And it was helping me just get more control in my life too, cause then it's like, I have time to clean the house and do all these things I don't feel like I have time for. So, and so I eventually I got to OMAD, which is just 1 meal a day, and I did that for the bulk of the time. So that was from probably about April or May or so that year to November. So that's what I was doing, and then walking 6 miles, just a normal pace, like 3 miles an hour. It's like 2 hours of walking, and I just walk around my house mainly.
Yeah. So lots of good stuff there. So basically, you're just walking and then eating 1 meal a day.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that meal, are you eating whatever you want? I know you said you're not counting calories.
Yeah, yeah, that was something that was really important to me. It was very important for me to learn how to eat all the food and still lose weight and then be able to maintain it. I wasn't like, I have tried like in the past, like I said, from the time I was like 6 years old, I was like on diets. I went on like every diet that there was, all through. I was on diet pills, like when I was in middle school, and I was just like always struggling with my weight, and it caused so much like stress around food. I mean, and I think that was part of my problem too. When I look back, it was like every time I sat down to a meal, I'm stressing out about it because I have like, well, should I be not eating this bread? Like, I love bread, but I don't want to be overweight. And so there was all this stress around it. And it was really important to me that I could just eat whatever my family's eating. Like, I just want to eat like a normal person. Like, my husband is a skinny guy, and he never thinks about any of this stuff. Like, calories even like are a foreign concept to him. He's like, what do you mean? Like, oh, there's like a nutrition label, and like, how do you even figure this stuff out? And so yeah, I just eat whatever I want at that meal. So like, I don't have any kind of restrictions. I don't say, oh, you can't have dessert, or you can only have dessert a certain number of times a week or anything. It's just like whatever I'm craving. So
that's awesome. Because, so you mentioned some, basically you were discussing your relationship with food. Mm-hmm. How do you feel your relationship with food now compared to like 2014?
Oh yeah, way improved. I mean, I'm not perfect, like I think I try to give myself some grace there because it's been a lifelong thing. So, but it just helped me to relax around food and to know that I can just eat. Like nothing's off limits. And so it was this weird thing that happened where I found I had stopping power, like all of a sudden, because it was like, I can have whatever I want. Like it's not like I have to wait for a special occasion or a special day or anything. It's just like what I want, I can eat it. So that helped a lot. And the only other side to this is that because I started this YouTube channel, it did complicate things for me. Like once I got the weight off, I maintained that initial weight loss for like a year before I even started the YouTube channel, my thought was like, I wanted other people to know, like, if I can do this, you can do it. And if you're like me and you just have a really hard time with diets, like you always end up going back to eating the same foods that you always liked, like there is a way to still lose weight and maintain your weight loss. And but by doing that, then it was suddenly like, then people were watching my weight loss journey, and that like adds this layer of complexity that wouldn't have been there otherwise. It was like super easy back before I had a YouTube channel and a podcast. But once I brought that in, then there's that, like, there's more of a fear, like, oh, what if I mess up and gain some weight? Like it does add some stress back in, but the actual, like, the way the relationship to food, as far as just me and food, we're good. It's just that YouTube thing and podcast that kind of brings a little bit of a stress into it. But I'm still working on that. And so far it's been good. I've been able to maintain my weight loss, and, I feel like I've made a lot of progress.
Yeah. It's basically like you're losing weight with an audience. So
right. Yeah.
That definitely would bring some stress that wasn't normally there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like this thing with this fasting, like I highly recommend everybody try it. Like, I'm not a doctor, but I think everyone should try it. I had a experience a couple of years back where I did an extended fast for a while. Mm-hmm. And about the third day, I was standing in my kitchen in front of my sink, and I was just standing there for something, I don't know, washing my hands or something. And all of a sudden I had this feeling, like the feeling when you wake up and you're like, you're late for work or something, like that feeling, that anxiety feeling. I was like, I'm supposed to be doing something right now. Like that's how I felt inside. And then I realized that, like, normally I would be eating at that time, and I wasn't eating. And I was just like, what do I do? Like I was supposed to be eating, and now I'm just standing here like, and it was a fascinating feeling to realize that, like, food has so much power and control over us, and it, our life is dictated by it.
Yeah.
And when you can step back and, only eat one meal a day, or fast the whole day and not eat anything, like your perspective changes, and you see the world from a different, view, which is very eye-opening and helpful I believe would be helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, I do totally agree. Like, I didn't realize how much food controlled my life.
Yeah.
Before I started fasting. It was really eye-opening. It's so hard to become self-aware about food. I feel like that's been the main thing about this whole journey, is like, I was just so unaware of of how I was really moving through my life, until, especially with intermittent fasting, because it was like, it created this space for me, like to see, like, oh, I'm panicking right now because I haven't had breakfast. Like it just is interesting to learn that about yourself.
Yeah. So I watched your videos, like I said, and there was one thing that you just said in passing, and that was that you were bored easily. And so when I'm thinking of eating one time a day and walking for 6 miles a day, in my mind that sounds kind of boring. So how do you explain yourself being someone that's bored easily, that's able to stick to something like this for so long?
Yeah, and I think that it kind of shows how much I've changed on this journey, because, in the past, especially like in 2015, for example, I was like trying different stuff all the time. I'd be like, I can't do that. Like, intermittent fasting is not working. Now I've got to do this other thing. And now I've got to count calories. Now I've got to I've got to add this in. And I was just constantly jumping from one thing to another. And that was really the change that happened, like at the end of 2015. At the end of that year, I felt like I had worked out so hard. I had put all this effort in, and I'd lost like a net total of like 15 pounds. And I was like, if I had just figured out how to lose a pound a week, I'd be down 50 right now. Like, it was just so frustrating. Yeah. And I thought, I've got to learn how to stick with stuff. Like, and it was interesting because, like, it wasn't like everything in my life I wouldn't stick to. Like, I've been married for, at this point, it's been 17 years. So, like, there were certainly certain things that I could stick to. Like, I just need to learn how to do that when it came to my weight management. Like, I've just got to figure out what works and stick with it, and learn how to do, hard things. Like, walking 6 miles a day, I mean, I don't know that it really burns all that many calories, but first of all, it kept me from eating in my fasting window. That was like one big help that it did. But then it also just taught me how to be self-disciplined. Like I said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it. And so, yeah, it does seem like a contradiction, like that I get bored easily, but also I've learned how to stick with it. So
yeah, I'm so glad that was the answer that you gave, because I think you hit on those two very important points, in that, like, when somebody somebody's working out, they're following diets and they're not losing weight. A lot of times personal trainers, especially, or fitness professionals or people in the industry, they'll start blaming the victim, and they'll say, well, you're not counting right, or you're not working out, you missed that one workout last week, or whatever. And it's like, if you go back and look at what they've done, for all the different diets they've been on, all the different, workout plans and things that they've done, these people are very disciplined.
right.
And for whatever reason, the programs that they were doing weren't working for them. But like you said, that we all have discipline around certain aspects of our life, or we wouldn't be able to function as humans.
Right.
But you just got to find what works for you for weight loss, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And so another very important thing that you said in one of your videos, you got from the 4-Hour Body, I think it was, and that was to do with experiments. So could you tell us a little bit about experiments?
Yeah. So one thing that when I decided to do in January, I said, okay, like I've got to figure like something out that I can commit to. And it was really scary to commit. And but in the 4-Hour Body, one thing that he had said was like, just run experiments, like experiment on yourself. Like it's an experiment of one or something like that. And so I thought to myself, okay, like I had the idea in my head, like what if I do intermittent fasting 6 days a week and I let myself just eat whatever I want? Like I'm not going to do any like low carb, whatever. And my fear was like, but if I do that, I might like gain 10 pounds or, and so there's like all this fear building up. And so I thought, okay, if I just say like, this is just an experiment, like it just changed my mindset. It was like, oh, like this isn't the end of the world. Like if it doesn't work, it's not me that failed. It's just that experiment failed. Like this plan didn't work for me for whatever reason. And it gave me the courage to try. And that kind of like experimental mindset, I don't know if it does something like where it kind of like takes you out of the equation and you're kind of more of the observer of what's going on, but it helps. That's the thing that really helped me to like weighing myself every day. That was something that I did decide to do like back in 2015. I started going to the gym and I thought like, I probably weigh, I mean, this had been a year past my, like, I've had enough of this. I thought I probably weighed like 180, I was like maybe 185, like maybe. And when I got on the scale, it was 222.2. And I was like, I never want to be back here again. Like I never want it to get to this point where I have no clue like where I'm at with my weight, because obviously I'm pretty good at self-deception. So, but just like starting to look at it as it's like, I'm just taking the patient's weight. Like it's not me. Like, it's just kind of like this third party. Like I'm just recording the weight of the patient, which maybe sounds weird, but just kind of having that like experimental mindset was really helpful.
Yeah, I've been taking some training for coaching, and it's one of the key things that they recommend for coaching is just putting everything as like an experiment. It's just an experiment. See if it works or not. And I think it's kind of like one of the points of the podcast and what I do is because it all comes down to the individual person anyway. Mm-hmm. And so most science is done in a way that you have a whole bunch of people, they do something, they take a certain supplement, they do a certain exercise or whatever, and then they average all that information together, and then they say, this is what you should be eating.
Right.
This is the supplement you should take for XYZ. This is the exercise you should be doing. In reality, that could be completely opposite of what you need as an individual.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to find out what you need as an individual is to run an experiment on yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's exactly what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And, you tried all these other things, you realized that it wasn't working. And so you ran an experiment You decided the variables of this experiment was fasting, intermittent fasting, and walking,
right,
and taking Sundays off.
right.
You ran it. It worked, so you kept doing it. And are you still? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I told myself 6 weeks because I saw that I was like, in the past, I was like quitting after a week or 2 weeks, and it felt like an eternity. Like a week felt like an eternity. So I was like, okay, I got to do it for the longer term. So 6 weeks. And then once I ran it for 6 weeks, I was like, this is good. This is something I can stick to. And I said, okay, I'm going to try for a year. And sure enough, by the end of the year, I was down to like within a few pounds of being in the normal BMI. And I was like, it was coming up on Christmas. I was like, I'm just going to maintain here for a while. And that's what I did.
All right. So are you currently still following this plan?
So right now I'm in maintenance. So once I started the YouTube channel, I decided I definitely wanted to be down in the normal BMI. Like I stopped like a few pounds above it. Like a normal BMI for me is like 154 or less. So I was like, I definitely want to get in the normal BMI. So that process was interesting because it was, that was on YouTube. So that like people were watching it, but also the weight loss was just a lot slower. Like it was like a third of a pound a week. So, which I had kind of mentally prepared for it. I always heard that like those last pounds are like really slow. So, I decided like, okay, when I was losing the weight again, I went back to OMAD. But once I got down to like 140 to 143, I wanted to just maintain. And for me, I said, I want to just maintain in the 140s. Like as long as I'm in the 140s, I'm good. So for me, like generally speaking, I like to do like OMAD or maybe like 2 meals a day. Like I don't generally find that I want to eat more often than that. Like I mean, like I like to eat lunch with my kids sometimes. So I do that. Like if they're like, hey, will you eat, lunch with me? Yeah, sure. Let's sit down and I'll eat. So it's generally probably 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day. And I'm not really strict again, because to me, the overarching thing is not so much like I must intermittent fast every day. And that's really, really important. For me at this point, my goal is just to be in the 140s. So as long as I'm in the 140s, I'm good.
What about the walking?
I still do walk. I walk 6 miles, 6 days a week. I did decide to take Sundays completely off. Like when I was initially losing weight, I did it 7 days a week, like no excuses. But I decided like I want to have that day off every week, just a day to be with my family and just to hang out and rest, really.
Yeah. So what do you use to track that? Are you walking around a track, or are you walking down the block, or?
That was another funny thing. So once I started to set a step goal, and this was like towards the end of 2015, I started to see like how good I was at making excuses for why I wasn't getting my steps in. Because I'd be like, oh, I waited too late, and now I can't walk around the neighborhood because it's too late at night, or like it was too hot today, too windy today, it was raining today. So one day I said to myself, I wonder if I could walk all 6 miles inside my house. Like just walking around, just like walk around inside my house. And I did it. Like one day I just did it. And then I thought, now I never have an excuse to not get these steps in because I can do it inside my house. And so for the most part, that's where I get my steps in. I will like, I'll walk outside with my husband. A lot of times we'll go out for a walk. I'll get maybe like 7,000 in the morning. And then, but for the rest of the time, I'm usually inside my house and just walking around getting steps in.
Are you tracking it with you said Fitbit?
Fitbit. Mm-hmm,
oh, okay. Yeah. So that's, you got to have wear marks in your carpet. Or are you on your floor as you're walking?
Yeah. But it's, again, it's like, what do you got to do? And that was just something I had to do. I realized I was really good at making excuses. So
yeah, that's a good self-awareness to realize that, you're just making excuses. And I think if people can hold that mirror up to themselves and kind of be honest with themselves, weight loss would be a lot easier for a lot of people.
It's very hard though, because so many times you feel like, oh, I'm trying so hard. Exactly, and behavior change is just hard. Like it just is like, it's just hard to change your behavior. Even if this is the right thing to do, even if like, I'll feel better. It's just tough. I mean, it's like just a lot of habits, and and just learning how to change the habit and to stick with it. And like, if you mess up, you got to get right back on it. And, if you fall 7 times, you get up 8.
Yep, exactly. And so you took your weight from the 220s to the 140s. You did it with intermittent fasting and walking. If somebody would find themselves in a position like you found yourself in back in 2014, when they see a picture on Facebook and they're like, who is that? And they realize it's them.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them to get started moving in the right direction?
Take a long, honest look at yourself. What kind of foods do you actually like? What kind of like movement do you actually like to do? And know yourself as well as you can, and build your own plan, like customized to you based on your self-knowledge, and don't really worry too much about what other people are doing, what other people are saying, like, oh, this is great. Like, there are some people who won't like intermittent fasting, and that's totally fine. There's another way, like pretty much all the plans will work if you can stick with it. Like, that's the thing. It's like, you just got to stick with the plan. So, and then start slow and don't be in a rush. Like, it's okay for it to take a long time. I remember feeling like a failure when I was losing a pound a week. I felt ashamed of it. Really. I thought, like, I'm not losing weight fast enough. And this is like I'm kind of like a driven, like type A type person. And so it felt like failure, but I was like, like, this is all I can do. And I wish I would have just been more encouraging of myself. Like, when that was happening, I wish I would have just been like, this is great. Like, because like slow weight loss, usually people can keep it off a lot better, like, as long as you're just keep at it and don't quit. So
being consistent, celebrating the small victories.
Yes. Yeah. The consistency is so key. It's like whatever you can stick with. So important.
Yeah. So just make your own plan. Don't worry about what other people are doing or saying. Right. Stick with it. Test it out. If it doesn't work, change the plan and do something different and find something that works for you. Absolutely. All right, Kayla. So if the listeners would like to, get a hold of you, find out more information about yourself, where can they go? Well, they can go to my website, 6milestosupper.com. They can find me on YouTube, also 6 Miles to Supper. That's the channel name. And I have a podcast called 6 Miles to Supper. So any of those places, you can find me. 6 Miles to Supper. They can find you any of those places. Yeah. I don't have any others like social media though. Like, I don't do social media otherwise. So I don't blame you. All right. Well, thanks for being on our show today. I'm sure the listeners will get some great value from all the tips and tricks that you gave us today. So thanks for being on. Thanks for having me, Sean. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Kayla. I love Kayla's story because it is a perfect example of what I mean when I say calorie conundrum. For Kayla, exercising harder and counting calories didn't work. There are many people like Kayla, and the reason why I created this podcast was because normally, if exercising more and counting calories didn't produce the desired result for someone, and they tried seeking help to solve their problem, the advice they would receive would be some modification of either exercising harder, counting calories better, blaming them for not following the plan correctly, or a combination of all three. Kayla didn't count calories, she didn't kill herself in the gym, and she didn't need anyone else to tell her what to do to lose weight. What would you be capable of if you were able to consistently participate in movement you enjoy, eat foods that you like without guilt, and heal your relationship with food and your body? I guess there's only one way to find out. And with that said, this is Coach Trick saying thanks for listening, and remember, when calories in, calories out doesn't work, that, my friend, is a calorie conundrum.
This podcast, including Coach Strick and guests, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects for the use of any information contained herein. Coach Strick and/or guests may recommend products or services in which they have a direct or indirect financial interest. To find out more, please visit www.calorieconundrum.com.